Yams.
All right, we're back. Level Up Grappling Podcast. Coach Brian, straight out of PCI Jiu-Jitsu, Mission Viejo, California. You know who's in the building? The world's largest lemur.
Bam, bam.
Val Childs. And guess what? Ladies and gentlemen, look at your screen. He's back, better than ever. Heart is fixed, super sexy, with a new hat on. Grapplezilla himself.
How you doing?
All your prayers worked. He survived, and he's here. And boy, let me tell you, you have been truly missed by the grappling community. So we are glad you're back, bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, even though it's in the evening where you're at. But still,
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Miss you guys too.
Yeah, we're just glad you're back, man. So we were having a food discussion before we started recording, but what do you want? I mean, you've had such a journey the last few months with, you know, your health and everything. What would you like to share, if anything at all, with the listening audience regarding, you know, what was going on?
So my aorta, I think it's called the aortic aneurysm. It burst and incredibly painful. I definitely do not recommend it for anyone. Rushed to the hospital. And, you know, the only thing I can say is I actually thought I was dying. When I woke up from surgery, I was in shock that I was still alive. Just live your, you know, every rep, count every rep. Just enjoy the now. Because tomorrow we don't know what's happening. Yesterday happened already. So enjoy it today. So, yeah. The only thing now I'm trying to figure, because apparently I might not be able to wrestle or grapple again or anything. So I said to the doctor, let's see what happens in a year. But, yeah.
I would imagine, though, you should be able, you would think they would want you to do some kind of exercise.
Yes, swimming. They said
forward.
Swimming, bicycling. Basically stuff that I don't do. So,
you know, I look at it like this. If you're doing that, why can't you just do gentle wrestling techniques, right? Just kind of like,
that's what
almost
I think.
like a flow wrestle style where, you know, you could still be teaching and like just entering and doing stuff, but
I thought Greco.
lightly.
That's actually the one I thought. I mean, without suplexes and everything, I thought Greco might be the way to go. We'll find out. I'm still not 100%. And it was kind of weird being the youngest guy there, that everyone was like old, around 70, 80, and just being young there. In one way, it was a gift that it happened now, because it would have happened anyways. But you get to see, and I got to meet a lot of guys and ask them what did they do. A lot of them smoked heavily or ate too much cheese or stuff like this. But, you know, it's just what, you know, we as men and women too, I guess, as well, especially from combat sports, we think we're invincible, right? And we try all these fads and everything, but at the end of the day, one thing is inevitable in life. It's that, you know, we have our time. And when that happens, it just changed the way I look at everything, especially meeting older people, you know. And it was a nice experience. And I can just say one thing is, to nurses and doctors, they're the real heroes. I mean, especially the nurses. But I did unfortunately miss out the last 2 months of a lot what's happening in the grappling world and the MMA world. And there was some huge fights that happened. And, you know, now it looks like we have CGI number 2 coming, which I think Craig Jones, if you need to take one guy into CGI to build a story, you got to take our boy Higgins.
Yeah.
I think you got to take our boy Higgins. Because
he needs to go.
And just his character and his origin story, as we'll call it, and coming from catch and that folk style wrestling, I think it could create for some really good matches. I do think Higgins can get far if he gets the right guy. Yeah. And I think second, it's going to create a great story and maybe a great rivalry that'll happen. You know, I think it needs to happen. So that's the one thing I would like to see. And other than that, of course, you know, I'm watching what's happening with, you know, here's the question. I'm so confused by this. Ecological learning.
Oh, yeah.
Ha 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 ha.
What is it?
Well, get Brian. Listen, do you really want to get Brian firing off on this?
I'm not sure, but it's so confusing.
Okay, so this guy.
So sit back.
Okay, this guy that is supposed to be the supreme authority, the supreme commander,
Supreme leader,
right? He's like the Kim Jong Un of ecological grappling. This guy, Greg Souders or whatever.
Okay.
Very arrogant guy. I don't really understand why he wants to come across as being such an elitist. I don't think it makes any sense. Here's what I've been able to ascertain. I'll put it like this. And I've talked to everybody that knows something about it, that's doing it for a long time. And we're just going to focus on jiu-jitsu for a second, because this is where there's a disconnect. And the reason why I say this, because we've been talking about this for a long time, about certain disconnects within the jiu-jitsu community that doesn't exist in other sports. And what that is any type of micro drilling and specific situational specific training. A lot of this was ignored in favor of, here's one technique you're going to learn. Okay, let's roll. You see this very consistent within the jiu-jitsu community as a whole, that most people come to jiu-jitsu just to quote unquote roll. Put the timer on the clock, let them roll around. That's all they really wanted to do. That's their social hour for violence. But what we've discussed in the past is that there is no such thing as developing yourself as an athlete when you're just, let's say you went to play basketball. Playing a basketball game or a football game or baseball or any sport without any context of training, drilling, it doesn't exist. So when you look at ecological, all that means when they're doing some kind of constraints-led positioning or drilling is you have live resistance. So we call it in my gym dynamic drilling, right? We have static drilling where there's no resistance. Then you have live dynamic drilling. And then when you have your dynamic drilling, you have particular rule set that goes along. Like as an example, for us in the month of March, we've just been doing go behind to mat returns. So we do a go behind mat return with an S grip, drop them down, go behind mat return with a 2-on-1 on one arm, drop them to that arm. And this is the what we're doing. This is the takedown that we're focusing on for the month. Now with that, I build it up. So every class day, we're building up a little bit at a time, right? So we start the class, just the hand fighting portion, the headbutt, hand fight. Then, okay, how are you clearing the arm, right? How are you getting around the arm to get to the go behind? So then we're doing that. And then one person's on offense, one person's on defense. Then I allow them, okay, both people on offense. But they know that the only thing they can do in that 2-minute round that they have is you can only bring the person to the ground with your go behind to the mat return. That's it. You can't do anything else. You can use setups, fakes. You can grab a single leg, but the single leg has to be dropped in order to take the back, right? Mm-hmm. So that's all it is you're putting rules around your dynamic drilling. Now,
okay, where
I see there's a huge disconnect, absolutely huge disconnect, and me and Val have talked about this ad nauseum. The most glaring example would be boxing. And I've seen it on people's websites where they're going, oh, we do ecological training for MMA. I'm like, are you fucking serious?
Yeah,
you want somebody to die?
Striking.
You can't. It doesn't exist. Imagine, I don't care who it is, Mayweather, Muhammad Ali, Joe Frazier,
the greats,
Val's dad, everybody, Mike Tyson, anybody and everybody. Hagler, Hearns, Leonard, and you say, you know what? You're not going to learn a jab. You're not going to learn a cross. You're not going to learn a hook. You're not going to be hitting the bag 1,001 times in the next 20 minutes. All you're going to do without any training at all, you're just going to go get in the ring and just start socking the shit out of somebody. No footwork, no movement, no weaving, no pivots, nothing. How quickly are they going to get CTE and how quickly are they going to die? Pretty fucking quick, if you ask me.
Very,
Right?
very quick. I would say
Pretty
so.
fucking quick. So I just bring it back to look, the two oldest things we have is boxing and wrestling. This is it.
For sure.
This is it. In every culture around the world, historically, since man has been on this planet, I don't care how man got here, since we've been on this planet, you're either punching somebody or grappling somebody. That's it.
Absolutely.
The best way to do it, what we've learned over thousands upon thousands of years, is you have to have repetition to understand how the body functions and how it works mechanically. If you do not have a mechanical understanding, you will fuck yourself. So when somebody says, I'm a learning facilitator, you just feel it out. It's like Montessori learning for fighting. Just do it as you go. Just feel it out, and whatever feels good to you, do it. That laissez-faire approach of training is incredibly dangerous and irresponsible. Now,
could it work at an elite level though? Once you know everything, yes.
You can do it at a beginner level. I'm doing it at a beginner level, but we still have the static drilling. Sorry, Val. We have the static drilling. I'm teaching the technique, and then we build up slowly with micro drills until you get to the constraints within the parameters I gave you of what I just taught you. Not, okay, somebody's going to lay on top of you, figure out how to get up, go. Are you kidding me?
I mean, but the thing is, like, vocabulary, and Brian, we talked about this before. Vocabulary is a important constraint.
Yep.
Right? Knowing what something is called is essential. And so when you dissolve the vocabulary, especially when you're talking about joint locks, right, and holds, I don't think people realize how easy it is to break a human body.
Yeah.
We're durable, but we're durable without force being concentrated into specific areas of the body. Thus, our body is a giant shock absorber. So if you understand anything about grappling, there's a reason why we pin, control, and isolate.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely.
So that we can concentrate force on the joints. And so for every isolation that we have, especially as it relates to a limb, there are very specific words that we use to describe what we are doing and how it is done in order to ensure safety and in order to ensure that people can learn it and practice it and develop it as a skill. When you hear folks in this ecological movement dissolving language that is essential to understand and drill properly, it creates this open market approach to learning for the student. And I guess you become just a facilitator, but you're not really training the people properly. And so if you're talking about someone who's never boxed a day in their life, never grappled a day in their life, right? And you just say, I'll give you a great example. You say in a grappling context, right? Just stop yourself from falling. Just stop yourself from falling. So a guy lifts you, right?
Yeah.
What's the one mistake that a lot of people make when somebody lifts them? They go like this. They put their arms out, right? And they extend, right? So imagine not teaching people how to roll, shoulder roll properly, how to break fall. Imagine you just don't teach that and you say, go figure it out.
It's so dangerous.
You get what I mean? So then imagine in boxing, like Brian said, imagine if you just said, hey, get in here. You know, you don't need any headgear because all you got to do is just move away. Use your move away movements, right? And I want you to be able to use, hit them with the closest hand, and then find a way to hit them with your second hand. And imagine what that's going to look like.
I saw it. There's somebody, I'm not going to say who, somebody sent me an Instagram page of people that are doing this on the East Coast with MMA. And I said, this is the cringiest thing I've ever seen in my life. The city should come in there and shut them down. This is so dangerous. And then the person was shitting on me going, oh, see, you're just so narrow-minded. You don't understand. This is the wave of the future. I'm like, no.
No, it's not.
This is not the wave of the future. This is incredibly dangerous and it's irresponsible. I've been doing this too long.
It's like us going from, being scientifically minded back into superstition around bacteria, right?
Yeah,
it's like in that case, then let's give up antibiotics. Let's just say antibiotics, they mean nothing for the general wealth and health of humanity, and we go back to letting people drink cornstarch to fix their issues with their stomach, right? Superstitious things, right? So we can go back, but that is by no means sustainable. So we live in an era where we have what's called fight science, right?
Yeah.
It's a science, okay? Meaning that it has structure, it has a common vocabulary. Even if you are coming from a different culture, they may still have something comparable as far as, oh, this is a wheel throw or a wheel toss or a rotation. If that culture didn't have the wheel, they will say a rotation. They will say something, right? That will be even within the proxy of the concept. And it's basic human knowledge, but it's systemized in a way to where you can constantly duplicate it. But with this whole ecological approach thing, you're basically saying, let's go backwards and exist before vocabulary, exist before structure, and then just go out and explore the frontier. That's great. That's great if you don't, I mean, and my last thing on this is great if you are not someone who really is, if you're not a Brian, right, who has credentials, right, you know what I'm saying, or somebody else that has credentials, if you want to just come into the game and you just want to, I don't want to say Gracie Baja it, but if you just want to McDojo something, you totally can come in and not be credentialed, not know anything, and just say, I'm just learning with you guys. You can get away with that. You can manipulate the whole game.
It just scares the hell out of me because I look at it like this. Imagine if you had a 12-year-old and you're like, you know what? Go take the car out, kid. Just go drive around. You'll figure it out as you go. How quickly?
Or swimming. Imagine throwing your kid.
You're going to die
in a pool.
Yeah. I mean, how
is
quickly?
It like the ultimate, because what it sounds like, it's like a narcissistic ego, super ego. Like, why do I need to learn? I can learn it myself. But every country in the world, we all have our elders. We learn how to make fire from them, how to fish. And then we would perfect it and then teach our kids that, and they would teach. And that's the evolution of how ideas happen. And they're saying, no, it doesn't work that way. It's in us. But yes, it's already there. But I mean, I don't know, something's off with it. I mean, and I'm totally open to someone trying to explain it where it makes sense. But to me, it doesn't make sense. It just doesn't. I mean, to teach someone, example, jiu-jitsu, or let's go to Kachasan. Kachasan can be quite complicated, okay? Especially, like, how do you teach someone, I mean, how to get a proper quarter Nelson on a really big moving opponent who outweighs you?
It takes time.
Yes.
Yeah.
And you're going to want to listen to guys like Brian and Val, who say, guy, like, put your hand over here because of scalpula,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
No, I'll figure it myself. Yeah, maybe in 30 years. But
it to your point, Grapplezilla, and this is where I think it's like really, really, like, I can't emphasize this enough. So I do this distance coaching program where, there's a lot of people you can get buy online videos. Great. There are so many videos out there. Everybody knows you can buy online videos. What I do differently, I have my monthly curriculum that they get to see, but they get to talk to me on the phone every week. or if they want to FaceTime with me.
different.
So I got the international people that want to do WhatsApp with me. So I have people that I talk to on a weekly basis, right, for about 30 minutes or so. And we break down their week in grappling. Nobody does. You can't get that from your coach at your gym. That's going to give you 30 minutes of your time, their time, and break down specifically what you were doing right or wrong and asking questions that matter. Okay. So when I'm trying to explain to somebody, hey, I had a guy recently say to me last week, Coach, I had a problem, and this is a guy I get, all different kinds. So I'm not going to call out any particular school, but there's a lot of big famous schools that some of their students do this coaching with me. He said, well, I had this issue with people keep pulling me into their guard, and I don't know what I'm doing wrong. And he was saying a couple things to me because I have these guys leave me audio messages. So one of my expectations is after your roll, after your training, take notes, leave me a audio message in terms of what roles stood out to you, what happened in the role, blah, blah, blah. I don't need to see it. I just need you to verbalize, because number one, I want them to capitalize in their brain, in their space, to have a visualization and understand what it is they're doing right or wrong. Mm-hmm. And then I also want to hear their patterns.
Interesting. Yeah.
And then when I talk to them, I can go, okay, here's what you did wrong without even have to look at it. Okay, number one, I go, here's what you didn't do wrong. This guy's telling me I kept getting pulled into guard. I go, let me guess. There was no staggered stance. There was no pelvic tilt. You didn't keep your chin parallel to the floor, did you? He's like, well, explain to me more about what a pelvic tilt is. Right? So I have the little video, this and that and the other thing, but you're not going to get that detail in a quote unquote just solo ecological environment where I have to explain to you the minutia for 10 minutes of how to create a pelvic tilt when you're standing, how to create a staggered stance, the percentage of your foot displacement, and how you're centering, how you're clearing the hand grips, how I don't want you, if you're wearing a gi, not to be deceived by certain hand placements, and what is your priority. So these are the things that I know for a fact they're never going to get from ecological training. You're going to miss it. I know for a fact they're not going to get it from general rolling. And I know for a fact they're never going to get it from their school, because those are the kind of details that a lot of times the instructors don't even know. So that's one of the things that really, really concerns me with that type of thing. To echo what Val's saying, it's like, well, when are you ever going to learn a pelvic tilt? When are you ever going to learn your proper head placement? When and how are you going to learn proper hand control? I didn't say forearm control. I didn't say wrist control. I said hand control. When are you going to learn how to turn your elbows, or how to initiate a duck under from an inside tie? What does that mean? What do your fingers feel like? How do you shuffle step out to get underneath? Where do you put your head? These little things, how are you going to learn this? You're never going to learn this from an instructional video. You're not. Yeah, and you're definitely, and on the other end, you're never going to learn it from an ecological environment where you're just dicking around and you're doing all this live stuff and nobody's sitting there giving you the details of here's what you're missing, because this is the shit that takes time and years. And especially if you're striking, forget about it. You're dead. If you go in there doing this ecological bullshit with striking, and I don't care what the level of training is with these people, somebody can walk out of there that very first day with severe CTE.
They get the wrong opponent for sure.
Oh my God.
It's kind of a comedical thing, like not comedical, it's ironic, because so let's say you take, he recently passed away, Buvaisar Saitiev. Okay. At his level, ecological makes sense because he's at that level. He knows everything. So he needs to understand the rule boards, but he would roll with his brother and thus get it. So it's almost like they're going to learning quantum physics without learning, like saying, you don't need to learn algebra. You don't need to learn arithmetic. Here's quantum physics, and just something is off. I'm giving it a chance because maybe I'm not the smartest guy, but maybe I'm not getting it right. But it just something, my spidey sense is tingling around this one, right?
Well, like, so a guy who is, for example, a legitimately trained catch wrestler, right, has throws in their repertoire, right?
For sure.
They can walk into a judo class, and when they are in a gi, they will immediately recognize the mechanics in judo insofar as it's related to throwing. Their gripping will be different, but they will have an understanding and say, oh, I understand how to do this. And the concept is there, but the concept is tied to a base discipline where the terms and everything and the skill development are actually there, right? So once you have reached a point in your development cycle where you can actually practice and execute, you can go and cross train, and the concepts are there, but the concepts are only reinforced through actual training.
Yes.
But to have concept with no training, that's teaching technique by not teaching technique. So what are you left with? What are you left with? Right?
Liability.
So, liability, yeah. And, good thing we have insurance. We have insurance to USA Wrestling and everything. So we're covered in a lot of ways. But it's, to me, it doesn't make any sense. I've had guys come into the gym who come from a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu background or a judo background, and I'll be showing a throw, right? And they're like, I don't know how to do this throw without the gi. So, like, for example, a basic Seo Nagi, right? I don't know how to do this throw without a gi. And then I showed them something that we do with manipulating the hand and the shoulder, which basically creates a fulcrum and a point where you can easily rotate them, and it has the same effect as if they were wearing a gi, right?
Yeah.
Now, they wouldn't know that because their discipline relies on the gi insofar as you're talking about specific types of throws in the gi. But yet, as soon as they come over and I show them this throw, they can connect the concepts. The concepts are there. And
Absolutely,
so they can sit there and watch. And then on top of that, they can ask the appropriate question. So I was asked the appropriate question of, so here's how we do it in judo. We do this, we establish this grip, but I'm noticing that you're doing this and you're rotating the arm out this way. They can even detect the subtle difference and the nuance to evaluate how to subscribe to the concept and then achieve the correct application and execution. But if you just say, I'm teaching you concept with none of the base, like I said, it is good if you want to come in and McDojo everything. There might be some folks out there. I don't know if there's any use cases really of folks that have succeeded in the
Sounds
ecological
like a George
approach.
Dillman type of grappling scenario.
Yeah. It sounds foreign. I mean, there might be some people out there who have achieved it, but here's the thing. They themselves probably are well trained and they went through the whole process themselves. And so now when they're talking about the ecological approach, they themselves are not a product of that.
No, they're not. And to your point, to add further to your point, the people that are doing it successfully, all it is situational drilling, live drilling. It's all like people are putting these terms. It's always these new phrases and terms of things that as athletes we've been doing for thousands of years. If we just say, this is why I do things again. This is why I do one section a month. So like, as an example, for the month of March, all we're doing is what I call chest to back defense and escapes. So chest to back can be like three things, right? So you have it from the behind, right? So you have your back mount, you have the turtle from behind, you have your cross body chest to back from behind, right? Like, so your turtle and they're on the side with the seatbelt, whatever. And you have your front headlock. So it's all chest to back mediated just from different angles, right? From the three most dominant angles. That's all I'm doing for the month of March. Now, that being said, first, I teach everybody the static drills of here's the technique, here's conceptually why we do what we do. We drill the shit out of the technique dry. Why? Because I want to build the muscle memory,
Yeah.
that neuromuscular connection of how you do it correctly. Why? Because I did judo. And I know the thousands and thousands and thousands of reps I put in every fucking twist, turn, move, and drop. And I know that works. It's the same fucking thing they do in wrestling.
All day.
We know if you want to do a double leg entry, you are doing it 10,000 times before you even drop the opponent. You're a snatch single. You're grabbing that snatch for an hour and a half before you're running the pipe and taking him to the ground. Okay. So then, once I have this, let's get back to this chest to back configuration. Once we have this chest to back configuration, at some point during the class, we have these 2-minute drills where one person is in that constraint live attacking them from a chest to back position. And in that constraint for 2 minutes, you have to try and defend, then escape, then attack in that position over and over and over again. How many times can you do it in 2 minutes? That's ecological training. It's the same fucking thing. It's just live situational drilling. But we don't do the dynamic drilling until we have the static drilling down first. Because I can tell you, sure as shit, and I've been doing this for a minute, you're going to have your certain group of idiots, right? No cruelty intended, but there are people that you can show them, have them drill it 1,000 times, and the minute you put them in the scenario, they fuck it up. And they just won't do it. And then you say, do this. And they go, I don't know what that is. Like, you've been doing it for the entire 2 weeks.
There's been an acid test.
People, right, telling me, you never showed me that. And I'm like going, what do you think you've been doing for the last 2 weeks? Like that level of brain dead. That level of brain dead.
Yeah, we have some brain deads. We have some zombies. We have some zombies.
So you have to factor that in. You have to accommodate.
And drilling does that.
So dangerous. Yes, and drilling does that.
Drilling does that because when guys are, because if I've got about like 30 guys in a class, right? You're explaining a technique, given the different levels of ability, intelligence, just attributes. Some guys are paying attention. Some guys are not. Some guys are connecting with it on a much deeper level. Other guys are nowhere near that. They showed up, their wife pissed them off. So they're just happy to like hear somebody else's voice, right? And then you get up and you say, okay, let's drill.
Yep.
And then when you look over, they're drilling something that you didn't say drill at all. And they're doing all these other things. And then I say, okay, now we're going to do a live round where your goal is to find a way to achieve this technique within the 5 minutes. Wait, what are we doing again? Right.
Yep.
So the way in which you force people then to plug back in is, you kind of say, okay, here is a tech demo, right? Then now you're going to drill it. Okay. Then you're going to do a live round with it. Yep. And then we're going to have an assessment. How did it go? What were you able to do? What were you not able to do? Now let's go back to do the tech demo one more time, slow it down, drill it again, and then live again. And then after
that's what works.
Right. And then all of a sudden, now you're going to say, okay, now that we've done this twice, now we're going to go live round, drill round, live round, drill round. And I might do this for 2 hours. Right? I might do this for 2 hours because you need to have the atmosphere relaxed enough to whereby you can instruct and provide, do a technical demo. Then you need to demo it so people can like get acquainted with it. Then they need to actually wrestle with it or grapple with it in order for it to be, to feel it. And for the pressure test to reinforce memory.
Yep.
Right. You know how many guys, I can tell you this, I can't remember necessarily what I drilled like 2, 3, 4 days ago. Right. But Brian, I can remember a fight I had in 2005, what I did when I did this, because the pressure forces crystallization, right?
Absolutely. It's
You
clear
see what
as
I mean?
daylight.
And so you have to create, and this is why people who compete accelerate in their skill set more than just people who are just hobby goblins, okay? There's a
You know,
reason for that, because you're testing it and you're forced to figure out how to apply it correctly.
I think there's a big kryptonite to the ecological approach the more I think about it. So, for example, I'm a kinesthetic learner. I need to do it. I need to feel it. What happens if someone's not a kinesthetic learner? How about if they're audio? Like they got to listen to a coach telling them, or they need to see it. Some people just, they need to see something. Where does
Most fights happen quietly. Most grappling happens quietly. There's some grunts. There's some but you know,
I'm saying,
those cues don't translate.
If you got a guy, some guys have to see the technique and show it to me. How does ecological work there? I mean, you're not giving the guy what he needs. A coach, like one of the things is when you coach someone, you try to understand, how does this guy learn? You understand how can I get it to him? And once you understand, some guys need it very dry, like a John Danaher, where it's explained with visuals, and some guys need it very charismatic. We show charisma, you show the this is X that happens to you, and what's the natural thing? You ask questions to get their brain going. But I think the ecological approach, what it sounds to me like, it's got a big flaw because it's only for people with kinesthetic. So someone who, like me, maybe it'd work, but how about for my buddy, let's say Archie, who he has to see the technique and understand from any angle, and he can learn it like that, and he'll do it perfectly.
And you have to talk ad nauseum in order for them to get it. Yeah, it's right.
Yeah, it just, something is, I think there's too much money in jiu-jitsu nowadays. And I think for a good reason. Listen, I hope there's more, and I hope everyone gets to make more and catch jiu-jitsu, wrestling, and the heart ward of a hospital. But at the end of the day, I think what happens is now we're at a point where we have to start separating what's marketing lingo and trying to get to be top dog through marketing and what's actually real. Like if you take the best coaches in the world, let's say you take I don't know, Hicks and Gracie for jiu-jitsu, and let's say you got Billy Robinson for catch, and let's say Dmitry Mindiashvili for wrestling. They have a system that all you have to do is two things: do what they say and drop the fucking ego. Sorry, my language there. But once you do that, they're going to guide you. They're going to understand who you are. They're going to have a planation of years where they understand who you are. For example, Val is very athletic. He's very fast, very strong. But maybe Val, for example, might not be so good with balance. Okay, and I'm a guy who's very agile, not fast, but agile. And Brian's a guy who's very strong. You need to build different things there. But according to this, how do you do that? There's too much ego in it.
Yeah. How do you cultivate the attributes, and how do you develop a full on game?
And it's interesting though that the people that you brought up, there's no such thing as, oh, just figure it out as you go.
Mm-mm.
Not with those guys.
You look at, Jesus
Billy
Christ
would kill you if you did something wrong.
The whole point of do it again. What the hell did do it again mean? We were drilling for hours the same shit over and over and over again. So I don't know, where, okay, then let's leave Billy out of it. Okay, well, Billy Robinson didn't do anything. Great. Billy Robinson never did anything. Okay, fine. Great. Good for you. Okay, let's look at Hickson. Okay. Hickson, the amount, if you really kind of dig into the amount of how he trained and what he did, it was repetition and sensitivity and repetition and sensitivity. And then he talked about when people say, well, what fighters do you have for your fights? Who are you getting to come train you? He's like, nothing. I just train with my students. So what was he doing? That was all ecological, right? It was a constraint. He said, okay, here, put me in this choke. And then 20 people line up to put him in these chokes and try and rip his head off. And he's just working methodologically how to get out over and over and over again. But that would have never succeeded if somebody at that level of Hickson Gracie and all of his grappling greatness didn't know how to do that shit first and do it over and over and over again since he was 2 years old.
Correct. And that's exactly my
Absolutely.
point. The
Like
base
Roberto
knowledge of
Travin.
everything.
Yeah.
When Hickson rolled with Travin the first time, Travin got him with gave him a very hard time over a round with the spider guard. And Hickson said, okay, wait. Hickson went home. He worked it, but once again, people say, oh, look, the ecological approach, he worked it at home and he figured it out. Yes, on top of the fact that he had, 35 years of literally every day, 3 times a day, jiu-jitsu with teachers, so which was
drilling the same shit over and over and over again.
Yeah.
You think, when people talk about, Hickson Gracie's armbar from the guard was, one of the greatest you would ever experience in your life. I don't doubt that. Not a position I would like to be in. Not a position that I even like to teach, but just for the sake of the purpose of the discussion, okay, let's say, I will full on believe that Hickson Gracie had the greatest armbar from the guard off his back in the history of armbars from the guard. Great. You mean to tell me he never drilled it statically?
For sure.
I mean,
I agree.
Come on. I've been in the room with the Machados, and the Machados, your warm up was 100 arm bars on either side. Before you did anything, before you went to the next thing. So, okay, it goes hand in hand. But first of all, Ed, the ecological, what we call dynamic situational drilling is not new. It's not new. This is not something revolutionary. It's something that's always been done. It's been done in wrestling rooms around the world for thousands of years. Yeah. And that's it. That's all there is to it. But you cannot have one without the other. You have to have the other piece of the equation, which is you have to have the static drilling. You have to have somebody teach it to you. And like you said,
language.
Like you have to feel it. You have to feel it. You have to see it. You have to hear it. You have to know it. It has to be ingrained in you before anything else, right? Before anything else. And that's a, look, it's everything is its flavor of the week. And, I just at this point, I just like, okay, you think whatever you want. I don't care. Go ahead. I still say, okay, you can think and feel however you want. Just when you're ready to come and train, come on down. And then let's see how it works.
Yeah, exactly.
Because ultimately, I think you're going to have a really hard time taking down one of my white belts.
Well, that's the great thing about grappling and wrestling is that we will fight our way like no tomorrow to show you that we're right. But the minute you prove us wrong, we have no problem saying, hey, it works.
Yeah. That was good. Add it in.
Yeah. I just don't see
anything in that works.
I mean, so the thing is, right, Jeet Kune Do comes to mind, right? And as a concept, Jeet Kune Do was clearly underpinned by actual knowledge.
Yeah.
It was foundational, right? But it was more in this context, a breakaway from limitation, right? Meaning that other martial arts that had made discoveries could be accessed without tribal affiliation. That is Jeet Kune Do, right? Now, if the ecological approach was to be, grappling is grappling and incorporate the best techniques from other systems that have succeeded in spaces where you don't train or your respective discipline doesn't have a philosophical, technical, or tactical focus, then you would say, oh, cool. But then my response would be like, we've already done that. We've already done that.
Yeah.
Right? We've already done that. So I guess for me, I'm just trying to figure out where the ecological approach fits in modern grappling with the high degree of sophistication that is already out there. with the use of common terms and the recognition of moves and techniques and tactics, and the fact that we have more documented evidence of application and use than any other time in history, right? We can see how things work in a proxy fight, which is like MMA style competition. We can say, I have 1,000 submissions, but how many of those submissions are used in an MMA fight? How many do you get off when a guy is moving constantly and you're trying to get a grip on the guy? How many of those, right? Which is for that reason why the basic fundamentals just so happen to resemble the high percentage submissions in MMA. Rear naked choke, guillotine, right? Back control, right? Positions like, so for me, I really would like to know where the ecological approach fits in the hierarchy of existing knowledge. Where does it fit? Because I understand as a concept, and I don't want to be colonized by this alien idea where there's already an ecosystem from, start through pipeline to finish, where we can see how techniques play out and we understand how not to teach. I'm pretty sure, Brian, in your experience, you could say, okay, I had coaches that taught me a certain way. And now as a trainer, I'm going to teach my guys a specific way because I've acquired knowledge, because I've gone through the process, right? And I understand the importance of saying we need to start on the feet. Even though you're a jiu-jitsu black belt, you understand the importance.
Yep.
Right? Just like in my case, I will tell guys, focus more on timing and control rather than speed. Yet I myself have speed. Mm-hmm. But my speed is a function of balance, timing, and control. Right? So at the end of the day, it's coming from a place that's rooted in actual hard work, drilling, training, repetition. Repetition is king. Repetition is king. I don't know how you get around that.
There was a old story. A guy stops in New York and he stops to a homeless guy and he says, "Hey guys, how do I get to Carnegie Hall?"
Story. Okay.
Yeah, how do I get to Carnegie Hall? And the homeless guy says, "You need to practice." Right? Repetition is the mother of all skill. I mean, there's some guys who are very natural talented, but let's put them aside. Because for every one, there's 150 million that aren't. Is there room for ecological? Yeah, there is. At the very peak, when you're at the summit and you're the leader, you have to have that because it's the only way you can maybe bring evolution to certain things within an art or a system. But once again, you don't teach the guy who just walked in the door that, then why would you even call it jiu-jitsu? Why would you even call it catch wrestling? Why would you call it anything? And I think like Brian said, it's one huge liability. Can you imagine some guy goes for a single leg and very common, goes down but lands on the top of his head, paralyzed, And then they ask, did you teach him what to avoid to keep his head straight? No, he had to learn it himself. Well, he definitely learned. He's going to know that lesson for the rest of his life, boys.
Absolutely. I'll give you a great example, Brian, and you'll appreciate this. Okay. So you snap a guy down, right? You drop your chest on him, and then you hit your go behind. Now he's in the turtle or referee position, and you're keeping your weight on his hips. Okay. Mm-hmm. Now you want to start putting your hooks in or your boots, if we say in catch wrestling. Now you see Brian. I'm trying to understand what you would say to this person. Okay. This person now is putting their boots in. Okay. Instead of flattening them out, though, the guy is running his body further and further towards his head. Okay. And he's kind of got his head now on the mat, right? While he's trying his best to either isolate an arm, but his legs are not breaking the base of his opponent. He's just up high, like under the armpits, if you will.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And the guy now starts to tripod up, right? and you see the guy's head on the ground start to turn like
God.
this.
Yep.
At that moment, what would you do? And what would you say?
I got to stop them immediately.
Why do you got to stop him?
Dude, they're going to kill. He's going to break his neck. Somebody's going to get
But
seriously
Brian,
hurt.
But the concept.
No, fuck that.
But the concept. So I had this
stopped
situation
him way before then.
right. But see, but that's my
Yeah.
but that's my point, because so I had a situation in the gym recently where a guy literally was doing that. You know, we call it riding down the slide, right? Riding down the slide. And you don't want to ride down the slide head first.
Definitely not.
Okay. And so now when I stopped the guy, he was like, "What did I do wrong?" I said, "You were putting yourself in a position to where if he would have tripod up and then immediately came back down, you could have jammed your head, jammed your neck. If he would have turned a certain way, your neck could have been damaged, right? And you were too high up and you didn't actually have control of his body."
Yep.
So then I had them redo this. And I said, "Okay, I want you to flatten him out. And I want you to make him fight in order to get his base up." And all of a sudden, when he was trying to fight to get his base up, he was creating the arm exposure necessary to achieve the technique without compromising his own neck. But so in that scenario, I think, well, what would the ecological approach, what would be the answer? What would it do? It's just say, "Oh, well,
None.
just land on your neck." I don't know what it would do.
It would do nothing. I'm
Where's it
absolutely
fit?
sure. Most of I'd say about 90%, 95% of the, pretty serious injuries I've seen have always been at a white belt level or beginner. And a lot has to do is they haven't the experience to see, like, wrestling's really dynamic.
Yeah. Yes.
Jiu-jitsu is really dynamic, man. Your joints only go certain ways, and you realize that when you push yourself off of a bed. But if you have a big boy on top of you, the amount of times I've seen guys like dislocate shoulders and stuff, it's always been a white belt or rolling with a white belt.
Yeah.
That's another time you get like a lot. Like you're very good, but you roll with a beginner. They do something that is a bit off and you're not on your game. So also, where would the ecological approach help you there? Once again, all I see is like liability, man. I just see liability all the way. And it's like, I hate this because I'm not trying to start a war or anything, but to me, it's like irresponsible. It's, you want to give, maybe. I think that it's all marketing mumbo jumbo. Like it's a bunch of lingo to make money.
It could be by design to get guys like us to talk about it.
I wouldn't doubt it.
But at the same time, we're going to talk about it anyway because we're in Geek Squad. So, but at the same time, it just I can tell you that there have been moments during my coaching career where I've saved students from grave mistakes and grave injuries that they themselves would not have even known were, out there. Right? They had no idea. But then as they began to progress in knowledge and then they see other students making similar mistakes, they come back to him and say, "Now I understand exactly what you meant during that time." I'm like, yeah, because at the end of the day, if you've done it, you trained it, you know what type of injuries result from it, you understand biomechanics. I'm not sure how the concept itself, if it's not underpinned by anything of merit, that time under tension, pressure testing knowledge, right? I even have a strong orientation against people coaching and training people if they themselves have not either competed or trained in an art and been on a mat and actually done it. You know what I mean? Like people who do private lessons.
Boots.
Yeah. People who, people who do, that's funny, man. People who do, he couldn't resist, man. People who do private lessons, right, and rank up, I don't believe they should be coaches. right? You don't actually train. You don't actually come to class. You do private lessons. And because you're lining the pockets of, and I see this more in jiu-jitsu academies, you're lining the pockets of your instructor. And next thing you know, they're a brown belt and no one has ever seen them in class. They don't roll.
I agree to some extent. But if you have someone, let's say, for example, I take Val, okay? Val, you have a lot of catch wrestling experience. You got a lot of wrestling, a lot of boxing, fighting experience. I take you, and I take you to take sambo private lessons from Vlad Kulikov, okay? Mm-hmm. There's a big difference where I think you could teach, but because you're going to rely on all that experience they have. But if someone doesn't have that, like there are not a lot of Vals or Brians out there. Yeah, I agree with you. But if someone has that, like a guy, I can see a guy, for example, let's say Brian, and Brian, there's a great Greco guy there. And Brian says, I'm going to take some privates there. That's, I think, different, but Brian's on top. But yeah, I have to agree with you. I just had to put that in because.
Yes, no, I agree with that. I agree with that. What I'm saying is I'm talking about the zero to hero complex that the ecological approach seems to kind of be putting out there. Like,
yeah.
You know nothing, but all you got to do is look inward and look in yourself, and you will find this hidden knowledge. It's like, okay, so this is the Buddha of.
Yeah, it's not happening. I think it's pretty much a fantasy.
You're meditating under the tree, bro, and you're like, I know how to do an arm bar. You're like, no, you don't.
No, it's you're basically combining, kind of. What was that? Empire Strikes Back, Star Wars, right? When Luke Skywalker goes to visit Yoda in the middle of the swamp. Plus, you kind of are just adding some other kind of like little fantasy, where it's just like it just doesn't work that way. That's not real life. You're not getting it through osmosis. You're not going to get a what do you call it? Like the psychic telekinetic?
Yeah.
Telekinesis.
Where you're going to just go, okay, now I'm going to just put it into your mind. I'm going to hypnotize you and you're going to learn the technique. That's not real. Maybe for somebody, I don't know, maybe that could be somewhere on the world where somebody just learned it through some kind of telepathy or osmosis or something. But it's just, the idea versus reality is not there. And I will say another thing, because I'm going to severely push back on something that they said. There is an experiment done with people that were like blacksmiths, and every time they swung the hammer down, the angle was off by like 2 millimeters. Well, we're humans, right? So it's not that you're intentionally pulling the angle off when you're striking a hammer over and over and over again. Mm-hmm. It's like we're naturally flawed. Okay, we're never going to have that perfect rotation or that perfect rhythm because we're not robots. It's the same thing. There's no such thing as a perfect pattern. It's not because, it's the ecological thing. It's because we're flawed humans. All of our senses are flawed. Add that to visualize, imagine this. Golf, one of the most difficult sports you could ever do in your life.
I suck at golf, by the way.
Okay, we all suck at golf.
Yeah.
And you think you are going to ecologically will yourself way to the PGA Tour. The fuck you are. Okay? Tiger Woods or any of these guys from back in the day, how many times did they swing a ball? Well, look, it wasn't exactly the same every single time, so it must mean because ecological is better. No, dipshit. The human body cannot rotate with that level of precision time in and time out because it's not a robot. You have to how many times do these guys practice their swing?
Millions,
there's
I'm
something,
sure.
There's something called there's something called a driving range, right? And I guess this is kind of news to somebody like Greg Souders or these types of people.
I've never heard of a driving range.
Yeah, a driving range. So what do you do with the driving range? You learn how to practice your swing, God forbid, at a driving range. You get yourself a couple hundred buckets of balls. You may be out there for 2 or 3 hours hitting that frickin' ball over and over and over again because the swing is imperfect, because the human body, by its nature, by its beauty, is imperfect.
Kobe Bryant, man. Kobe Bryant, before and after games, he was there like training for hours and hours and hours, hitting the same shot, the same dribble move, the same dribble move. And you know what? That's how you get to be the best.
That is.
Yeah.
You know?
And that's crazy when you think about it, right? Because
Yeah.
I think in that experiment, they were saying something about how you really don't have patterns or something like that. I could totally be wrong, but that is actually an experiment that truly favors drilling, repetition, and training over and over again, because the human body being an imprecise instrument, how do you channel thought through an imperfect instrument?
Very sure.
Repetition.
Because the repetition holds it together despite you being off here, off there. Imagine if you did not have any of the drilling, you're going to be all over the place. It's going to be chaotic. I don't know if they believe this is like some organized chaos. We're not talking about the creation of the universe, guys. We're talking about you potentially getting wrecked out there in real life. Okay. You know, so I'll give you an example. This is a great example, right? Okay. So you're in a boxing ring, right? And you're in front of your opponent, and your opponent steps a certain way. He shifts his head a certain way, moves his shoulder a certain way. Now, to people on the outside, they just think like, oh, you know what? This guy, they're just kind of like jockeying. They're kind of like trying to see who's tougher. No, in that split second, I was able to then discern, because this is actually what happened, that he's moving his head for a couple reasons. One, in the event that I attack him while he's looking for an opportunity, since he's in motion, he has an ability to potentially knock some of the force off that blow. He's also moving his head to gather information to see what my reaction is going to be, right? He's also using it to distort and manipulate distance. So at the same time, there's one movement like this, left and right. He's doing multiple things. And unless you have trained and drilled, you don't know that this simple movement serves multiple purposes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now you, Mr. Ecological, you get out there and like, oh, look at my head. And then, clap, what just happened? You see what I mean? So like, for example, if Brian and I say, hey, man, you got to use your head movement. We don't just mean to be defensive. We mean to be offensive. We mean to control your opponent, right? We mean if you need to get on your bike and use evasive movement to get away, your foot management, the head movement is essential. Now, ecological approach to striking, you say, yeah, man, just get out there and move your head. Yeah, move your head outside of this box and watch this kick come.
Yeah.
Move your head too far over a certain way, and then your weight placement is in your front leg and leg kick comes. Mm-hmm. Right? So the head movement is a great example of the depth of knowledge you have that only comes from drilling and repetition.
Yeah. And
being able to then throw a punch and then get your head off the center line. The whole concept of a center line, what's the point of that in an ecological approach? You know, just thinking realistically, right? Mm-hmm. And I'm only taking this word and trying to sprinkle it across multiple disciplines because that is the potential of where this can go. It can go into all these other combat spaces, and it will allow fraudulent people, in my opinion, to teach knowledge they don't have, or
Absolutely.
to turn it into a money printing machine for guys who may have the knowledge, but they don't want to do the training. They just kind of want to have people come in and turn it into like some social club where they come in like, man, yeah, I'm really learning how to fight. Yeah, you keep learning how to fight, buddy. Good job. And did you pay your membership fee? Yeah, you keep going. It leaves so much open. It leaves too much liability out there.
I think it's a bigger issue than we think.
Yeah.
For the fact is, where does it leave? You know, I just also ask myself, what's the comedy of it, like the irony, that's the right word of it, is I do see that there is a value. It's just, you talk about the end of the tunnel, man. And it's very rare, too.
But it's already been done.
Yeah.
It's already been done for thousands of years. We already do it.
I'm saying that's my point. I mean, like for example, to your point, Brian, like when we do dilemma training or situational training,
Yeah,
that's exactly what we're talking about.
exactly.
I mean, that's exactly what, you come in and it's like, when you got guys who have been training in your classes and they've been working, and then you got a guy, for example, that's getting ready for a fight, or as a competition. And then you start to narrow down your techniques and your tactics, right? And you start running through situations. You say, this happens, this happens, this happens. And all of a sudden, now they look back on the technique and say, now I understand how to really think about this technique the right way. Now I understand really where my body sensitivity needs to be. My awareness in the execution needs to be. We already do that. But they're saying, it sounds like they're saying we're going to get there without all the other additives. You know, it's like making hummus without
the chickpeas.
I'm not going to go there. I'm not going to go there. I'm not going to go there because I'm going to offend Grapplezilla, because I know how he is about hummus, man.
There is something. It's like, let's just take it to something that's a bit, if you're going to go to war and you have a year to train, you say, okay, here guys, here you go. Here's the guns. You'll learn how to use it itself. You learn how to clean it yourself, all the tactics, or you could go to SEAL Team 6 or Delta Force and show them how to have war. I mean, it's like, who's going to eat who alive? It's, of course, the guys who get the proper training. Will they come with new tactics? I'm sure it happens all the time. Probably not, but, and then if that one tactic, oh, look, it's the ecological approach. No, it's how evolution happens of everything. But something is, it's a weird world we live in, boys. That's all I can say.
But you know what? Did you catch what Brian did though? I said it's like making hummus without, and I didn't say.
And he said, without chickpeas. You're right.
Right. So how would he know? Now imagine if I'm like, hey guys, we're making hummus, and you don't know what hummus is.
Which is the language.
That's the language. So immediately he filled in the blanks. Now imagine if I would have been like, no, red beans. He was like, then you're not making hummus. It's not hummus if it doesn't have this. You would know.
It's also like, in grappling, you have.
Brian just proved the whole ecological argument. You just disproved it. It's gone.
You have like techniques that are cross system, right? So, for example, you have a grapevine throw in wrestling, and then you would have the Aviv throw in Sambo. They pretty much work the same way. Now, the name, if you get into nuances, they're different names, but it's not. The language of the throw is that you've determined what that is. It has to do with your leg going around someone, lifting their up so their hip is above you, and then throwing them where you look. Mm-hmm. So yes, I understand. I think you're spot on with the language thing. I think what happened is, society got
for God's sake, human, we have language for a reason.
Yeah, and I think society got too much into talking too deep on philosophy, like, what is a cat? It's like, man, a cat's a cat, and I'll get in and do the push-ups, boys. It's like we can philosophize. And you know what? I think there's room for that, for guys like Danaher and everything who come from that background. For the average guy, like Henzo said, don't try to over intellectualize it. Like because to be honest, man, when we started grappling, it was complicated, but it was quite easy to learn. But nowadays, with all the like philosophical and intellectualization approach, it's really complicated. Like you think, like, do I really need to know 672 versions of a straight armbar or Jujikatami? No, you need to learn one perfectly in the setups, and I mean, there's a bit of ecological for you, but that's a natural thing. You'll naturally go into it, but you had to learn that first armbar. It's yeah.
All right.
Anyways,
let's this was good. I love how Grapplezilla's back and just throws us right into a topic of controversy.
We talked about how to make hummus.
We did.
Amen, brother.
That's what I'm going to title this. Level Up Grappling, the hummus episode.
That's what it is, man. It's like, Brian corrected me right away. And I didn't even say anything, and he filled in the blank. Knowledge. And then you nodded because you're like, I'm a hummus connoisseur, bro.
Yes.
Almost, yeah.
So let's wrap this up for today, just because Grapplezilla needs his rest. This is his first episode back. Yeah. So I want to be mindful of time, and, we're leaving this in a good place. what was I going to tell everybody? Reminder, whoever wants to come out, we've got the combat-based 3-day camp, July 18th, 19th, and 20th at PCI in Mission Viejo. So for $300, you're getting 3 full-length seminars with Chris Howder. You're getting a yoga seminar. There's a women's only seminar. There's a catch wrestling seminar with yours truly. There's an MMA seminar and a knife defense seminar, and tons of open mats every single day. So you'd be out of your mind not to jump in on this opportunity to come have some fun, hang out with us, and learn a variety of different perspectives, and just have a ton of fun. And what an incredible value. That's 3 days, $300. And geez, man, I can't wait. So that's, again, 2025, July 18th, 19th, and 20th, PCI Jiu-Jitsu in Mission Viejo, California. You can sign up at combatbase.com. And I look forward to seeing you all there. And gentlemen, this was awesome. We'll be back again next week. And we are so excited that Grapplezilla has returned.
Thank you very much.
Grapplezilla.
All right, guys.
All right.